You have heard the names: Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. They are on the news, in your social media feed, in your doctor's office, at dinner tables across the country. The companies making these drugs are worth more than the entire GDP of most countries. Celebrities are using them quietly. Athletes are debating them publicly. Millions of ordinary people are injecting them every single week. But here is the problem. If you asked most of those people, including most people currently on these drugs, to explain what a GLP-1 actually is, how it works inside the body, and what the science says about the results and the risks, you would get buzzwords and blank stares. So that ends today. In the next 14 minutes, you are going to understand exactly what GLP-1s are, how they work, what the real numbers say, what the risks actually are, and what happens to your body when you stop taking them.
No hype, no affiliate codes, just the science. Let's get into it. Before we talk about any drug, you need to understand one thing. GLP-1 is not a pharmaceutical invention. It stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, and it is produced in the lining of your small intestine, in specialized cells called L cells, and released into your bloodstream within minutes of eating a meal.
The moment those molecules enter your blood, they get to work, and they are doing several things at once. First, the pancreas. GLP-1 signals the pancreas to release insulin, but only when blood sugar is actually elevated. This is critical. It does not trigger insulin randomly. It responds to need. When blood sugar rises, insulin releases. When blood sugar is normal, it backs off. Second, it suppresses glucagon. Glucagon is the hormone that tells your liver to dump more sugar into your blood. Less glucagon means more stable blood sugar. Less of that post-meal spike that drives fat storage and energy crashes.
Third, it slows gastric emptying. Your stomach physically moves food into the small intestine more slowly. Nutrients absorb more gradually. Blood sugar rises more gently. And, most importantly, you feel full for longer. Fourth, and this is the mechanism that changed everything, it travels to the brain. GLP-1 receptors exist in the hypothalamus, the part of your brain that regulates hunger and satiety. When GLP-1 binds to those receptors, it sends one clear instruction.
You are full. Stop eating. That is your body's natural GLP-1 system. It runs every time you eat. It has been running since the day you were born. The problem is that your natural GLP-1 only survives in the bloodstream for about 2 minutes before enzymes break it down. The entire pharmaceutical story of GLP-1 drugs is the story of scientists asking one question. What if that signal lasted much, much longer?
The first GLP-1 receptor agonist, a drug that mimics and extends the natural GLP-1 signal, was approved by the FDA in 2005. It was designed for type 2 diabetes. It worked. But the weight loss effects were modest, and nobody outside of endocrinology was paying much attention. Then something happened.
As the drugs improved, patients started losing significant amounts of weight, not as a minor side effect, as a consistent, dramatic, clinically measurable outcome. And the entire research community started paying very close attention. Modern GLP-1 drugs are engineered to resist the enzymes that break down natural GLP-1. Semaglutide, for example, survives in the bloodstream for approximately 7 days. That is why it is injected once a week. The signal that your body normally sends for 2 minutes is now running for an entire week, continuously telling your pancreas, your digestive system, and your brain exactly what your natural hormone would tell them, but without stopping.
Now, here is where it gets more interesting than most explanations go. Normally, eating, especially calorie-dense, highly palatable food, triggers a dopamine release in your brain's reward system. That dopamine hit is part of why processed food is so hard to stop eating. You are being chemically rewarded with every bite. GLP-1 drugs blunt that dopamine response. Food becomes less rewarding at a neurological level. It does not taste worse.
it just loses its psychological pull. The reward signal driving overconsumption gets dialed down. This is what patients mean when they say the drug quieted their food noise. The constant background thoughts about food, the cravings, the pull toward eating when you are not actually hungry, all of it becomes significantly quieter. This mechanism is also why researchers are now investigating GLP-1 drugs for addiction treatment. Alcohol, nicotine, opioids. The reward pathway being modulated is the same one that drives addictive behavior. That research is early, but the biological logic is sound. And layered on top of all of this is the blood sugar control, the insulin stimulation, the glucagon suppression, the slowed gastric emptying. For people with type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance, those effects alone can be life-changing. This is a drug class doing multiple things to multiple biological systems simultaneously. That is why the results are so dramatic. And that is also why the side effects, when they occur, can be significant. Let us clear up the naming situation, because this confuses almost everyone. There are two active ingredients you need to know: semaglutide and tirzepatide. Semaglutide is the molecule inside both Ozempic and Wegovy. Same drug, different doses, different FDA approvals. Ozempic is approved for type 2 diabetes at lower doses. Wegovy is approved for weight management at a higher dose, up to 2.4 milligrams weekly.
If someone is taking Ozempic specifically for weight loss, not diabetes, they are using a diabetes drug off-label, which is legal, common, and a topic that generates endless debate. Tirzepatide is the molecule inside both Mounjaro and Zepbound. Same pattern: Mounjaro for diabetes, Zepbound for weight management. But here is the key difference between the two molecules. Semaglutide targets one receptor, the GLP-1 receptor. Tirzepatide targets two receptors, GLP-1 and GIP. GIP is another gut hormone involved in insulin regulation and fat metabolism. Hitting both receptors simultaneously creates a more powerful combined effect across more biological systems. The clinical results reflect that difference dramatically. In May 2025, the New England Journal of Medicine published the results of the SURMOUNT-5 trial, the largest direct head-to-head comparison of semaglutide and tirzepatide ever conducted in humans. 751 participants, 72 weeks, both drugs at their approved weight management doses, same injection schedule, controlled conditions. Tirzepatide produced an average weight loss of 20.2% of body weight. Semaglutide produced an average weight loss of 13.7%. That is not a small gap. On a person weighing 250 pounds, that is the difference between losing 34 pounds and losing 50 pounds. On the same drug class, the same injection schedule, over the same 17-month period. Tirzepatide won the head-to-head by a significant margin. But here is something essential to understand about all of these numbers. Those are clinical trial results: controlled conditions, supervised settings, consistent dosing. Real-world data tells a different story. A 2025 study tracking actual patients found that semaglutide users lost around 7.7% of body weight after 1 year in real-world practice. Tirzepatide users lost around 12.4%, roughly half the results seen in trials. Two reasons: early discontinuation. Many people stop the drugs within the first year, usually due to side effects or cost. And inconsistent use. Stopping and restarting the medication appears to reduce its effectiveness over time. The drugs work, the data is clear, but the results depend heavily on what happens after the prescription is written. Most of the conversation about GLP-1 drugs focuses on weight loss. That is understandable. The numbers are dramatic. But the most scientifically significant story is what these drugs appear to do beyond the scale: heart disease. Multiple large clinical trials have shown that GLP-1 drugs reduce the risk of major cardiovascular events, heart attack, stroke, cardiovascular death, in people at high cardiovascular risk. The cardiovascular benefits appear partially independent of weight loss. What makes this finding scientifically important is that GLP-1 receptors exist in the heart and blood vessels.
The drugs appear to reduce inflammation, improve the function of blood vessel walls, and stabilize arterial plaques through mechanisms that are not simply the downstream result of weighing less. The drug is protecting the heart directly.
Liver disease, kidney disease, and then there is addiction. Because GLP-1 drugs modulate dopamine reward pathways, researchers are now actively studying them for alcohol use disorder, nicotine dependence, and opioid addiction. These drugs started as a diabetes treatment. They became a weight loss revolution. They may be becoming something much larger. Now, let's talk about what these drugs actually cost you, because the risks deserve the same clarity as the benefits.
Gastrointestinal side effects are the most common. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation affect a significant portion of users, especially during dose escalation phases when the body is adjusting to higher amounts of the drug. For most people, these side effects reduce over time. For some, they never fully resolve. This is the single most common reason people stop taking GLP-1 medications.
Muscle loss is the risk that gets the least honest coverage. When you lose weight rapidly through any method, your body does not burn fat exclusively. It also burns lean muscle mass. With GLP-1 drugs, research suggests that somewhere between 20 and 40% of total weight lost includes lean tissue.
The consensus is clear. Meaningful muscle loss occurs on these drugs, and it needs to be actively countered. If you are on a GLP-1 drug and you are not doing resistance training and eating adequate protein, a significant portion of your weight loss is coming from your muscles. Rare but serious risks include pancreatitis and gallbladder disease. There is also a theoretical risk of thyroid C-cell tumors based on rodent studies, though this has not been confirmed in human clinical populations. Anyone with a personal or family history of thyroid cancer or a condition called MEN2 syndrome should not use these drugs. This section is the most important part of this entire video. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine in November 2025 followed 308 people on tirzepatide for 36 weeks. Then half of them stopped the drug.
82% of those who stopped regained 25% or more of their weight loss within 1 year of stopping. The conclusion was consistent. Weight regain after stopping GLP-1 drugs is rapid, substantial, and highly predictable. Here is why that happens, biologically.
When you lose weight, your body interprets it as a threat to survival. Hunger hormones increase, metabolism slows, food cravings intensify. Your brain actively works to restore the weight it has decided is normal. GLP-1 drugs suppress all of those mechanisms. When you stop the drug, those defenses come back immediately. The hunger returns. The food noise returns. The biology does not forget.
The weight that comes back is almost exclusively fat, not muscle. That does not mean these drugs are not worth taking. For people with obesity-related health conditions, the cardiovascular, metabolic, and quality of life benefits can be profound and clinically significant. What it means is that these are not short-course medications with a clean exit. The decision to start should be made with the full understanding that long-term, likely indefinite use may be the actual plan. The pipeline is moving faster than most people realize. CagriSema is the furthest along in trials, with an FDA review expected sometime in 2026. Oral GLP-1 formulations are now a reality. The addiction research is gaining serious momentum.
And the broader question, whether GLP-1 drugs can meaningfully extend healthy human lifespan by addressing systemic inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, and cardiovascular risk all at once, is being actively studied. GLP-1s started as a diabetes treatment. They became a weight loss phenomenon. They are becoming something that does not have a clean category yet. The story is nowhere near finished.
GLP-1s are not magic. They are powerful, well-studied peptide drugs built on decades of biological research, the same category of molecules your body's been using to regulate itself since before you were born. The results are real. The limitations are real.
and the conversation is just getting started. If this video helped you actually understand what everyone around you has been talking about, share it. It is the most useful thing you can do. Subscribe to What the Health for science that respects your intelligence. We'll see you in the next one.